Elijah Carter was 43 years old, and until that Friday night, he believed the life he built was solid. 15 years of early mornings and late jobs had earned him his own electrical contracting company, a paid-off home in southwest Atlanta, and a 9-year marriage he had never once given a reason to fail. He was the kind of man who fixed things, structures, systems, problems, because he was raised to believe that steady hands and a loyal heart were enough. His wife, Brianna, told him Dominic was just a friend, someone Jade introduced her to, someone harmless. Elijah had no reason not to believe her. So when she left for dinner that Friday, he gave her a 12-minute head start. Then he followed. What he watched her do in that Buckhead lobby, without buzzing, without waiting, using a key fob she had never once mentioned, told him everything words never would. And in that parking lot, sitting completely still in the dark, Elijah Carter made a decision that Brianna never saw coming. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Through the quiet streets of southwest Atlanta, Elijah Carter guided his work truck with the easy confidence of a man who knew every turn by heart. The evening air carried the last warmth of a long summer day, and the radio played soft jazz at a volume that let him think. 14 hours on a restaurant rewire in Midtown had left his hands tired but steady. The good kind of tired that came from work done right. He thought about the job as he drove. The restaurant owner had watched him trace the old wiring through the walls, methodically identifying every point of failure. "You're thorough," she'd said, impressed. Elijah had simply nodded. Thorough was how he approached everything: his work, his home, his marriage. Carter Electric hadn't always been 6 people strong. He remembered the early days. Just him and one other guy, a pickup truck, and more determination than business sense. Now they had 3 vehicles with the company logo, a solid reputation, and enough steady clients to keep everyone busy. He'd built it the same way he'd built everything else in his life, carefully, piece by piece, with attention to detail. The house came into view as he turned onto his street. A 1960s ranch he'd transformed over 9 years of marriage. Every improvement bore his signature. The deck he'd built their 3rd summer, the kitchen cabinets he'd installed while Brianna was visiting her mother, the recessed lighting she'd picked out from a magazine. He remembered her excitement when he finished each project, how she'd run her hands over new countertops or stand in doorways admiring fresh paint. Lately, though, her enthusiasm had grown quieter, more measured, like she was performing appreciation rather than feeling it. He pulled into the driveway, noting Brianna's everyday car was still there. The garage door hummed open at his remote signal, revealing the workbench he'd built with Andre last summer. Andre, Brianna's younger brother, had become more than just family. He was Elijah's right hand at Carter Electric, the kind of friend who showed up to help without being asked. They'd spent countless Sundays in this garage, talking about everything and nothing while they organized tools or worked on projects. Inside, the house smelled like the vanilla candle Brianna always kept burning in the kitchen. He found her in their bedroom, putting on earrings in front of the mirror. She wore a black dress he didn't remember seeing before, her hair swept up elegantly. "Hey," she said, catching his reflection. "How was the restaurant job?" "Got it done." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her apply lipstick. "Going somewhere?" "Jade's birthday dinner, remember? I told you last week." He didn't remember, but that didn't mean much these days. Work had been busy, and sometimes details slipped past him. She looked beautiful. She always did when she was going out, taking extra care with her makeup and clothes in a way she rarely did for their own dinner dates anymore. "Which restaurant?" he asked. "That new place in Buckhead." She checked her phone, slipped it into a small purse. "Don't wait up. You look tired." He was tired, but it was the kind of tired that usually made him want company, not solitude. Still, he just nodded. "Tell Jade, Happy birthday." Brianna kissed his cheek, careful not to leave lipstick, and headed for the door. He noticed she took the Mercedes instead of her regular car. The nice one. The one they usually saved for special occasions. The house felt different after she left. Quieter in a way that made him notice things. The empty wine glass by the sink. The way her perfume lingered in the hallway. The fact that she hadn't mentioned which restaurant, even when he'd asked directly. He heated up leftover pasta and ate at the kitchen counter, standing up like he did on job sites. The Braves game played on the living room TV, but he found himself not really watching it. Instead, he was thinking about patterns, the way electrical problems always left signs if you knew where to look. The slight dimming of lights before a circuit failed. The warm spot on a wall hiding a loose connection. He fell asleep on the couch sometime during the 7th inning. When he woke hours later, the house was still empty. The clock on the cable box read 11:42 p.m. That Friday night, when Brianna mentioned dinner with Jade again, something clicked in Elijah's mind like a circuit completing. He told her about the late estimate, with the same calm he always had. Watched her leave in the Mercedes again. Waited exactly 12 minutes. Then he backed his truck out of the garage and followed her tail lights into the night. Brianna's Mercedes moved smoothly through the quiet Atlanta streets, heading north. Elijah kept 3 cars between them, his work truck's familiar rumble a steady companion in the growing darkness. She wasn't heading toward any restaurant he knew in Buckhead. Instead, she turned into the entrance of a sleek, high-rise apartment building, the kind of place where monthly parking probably cost more than some people's rent. He pulled over across the street, positioning his truck where he could see the entrance clearly. The Mercedes disappeared into the parking structure, and Elijah waited, his hands still on the wheel. 5 minutes passed, then 10. He watched Brianna emerge from the elevator in the lobby, her black dress catching the overhead lights. She moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She didn't pause at the security desk, didn't reach for her phone to call anyone. Instead, she pulled something from her purse, a small key fob, and waved it at the reader near the elevator bank. The light turned green. She stepped inside. Gone. A key fob. Not a temporary pass. Not a visitor's badge. A permanent key fob that meant she had been here before. Many times before. Elijah sat in his truck, engine off, street noise fading to white noise around him. He watched the building's entrance with the same patience he used when tracking down electrical faults. Sometimes you had to wait, had to watch, had to let the problem reveal itself fully. 30 minutes passed, then 60, then 90. Brianna didn't come back out. The drive home felt longer, though he took the same roads. His garage door opened at the press of a button, revealing the space he had carefully built over years. The pegboard wall of tools he'd installed himself. The workbench where he and Andre had spent countless Saturday afternoons, sharing beers and talking about nothing important. The shelving units he'd designed specifically for his electrical supplies, each shelf measured and cut to exact specifications. He killed the engine, but didn't get out. In the darkness, his mind worked like it did on complex jobs, methodically, connecting points, following the path of the current until he found where it went wrong. The Savannah trip surfaced in his memory, their anniversary, almost 3 years ago. He'd spent 2 months planning it, researching historic inns, making dinner reservations at places Brianna had mentioned wanting to try. He remembered her face when she opened the bracelet, delicate silver links with a small pearl charm. She'd seen it in a shop window weeks before, just a passing comment, but he'd gone back the next day. When she opened it, tears had welled in her eyes. "You always know exactly what I need," she'd said. 3 years ago. The math was simple now. Dominic's name entering their conversations. The casual mentions that weren't casual at all. The way Dominic touched Brianna's elbow at that rooftop event. The familiar way he'd known her drink order. The Mercedes on nights she was supposedly having dinner with Jade, the key fob. In the dark garage, surrounded by the things he'd built with his own hands, Elijah sat perfectly still. He didn't reach for his phone, didn't call Brianna to demand answers, didn't call Andre to ask questions he now realized his brother-in-law might already know the answers to. Fire wasn't the answer. He knew what fire did to wiring, how it followed the path of least resistance and destroyed everything it touched. The digital clock on his dashboard clicked over to 1:30 a.m., then 1:30 a.m. He thought about every anniversary since Savannah, every holiday, every Sunday morning when she'd reached for him in bed and whispered that she loved him. All of it built on something hollow, like bad wiring hidden behind beautiful walls. When the first hint of dawn started to lighten the sky, Elijah had made exactly one decision. He would know everything. Not pieces, not assumptions. Everything. He would trace this all the way back to its source, before he took a single action. He got out of his truck, his movements measured and calm. Inside, he showered, dressed in fresh work clothes, packed his lunch like he did every morning. When he backed out of the garage 20 minutes later, he looked exactly like what he was, a skilled tradesman heading to his first job of the day, steady hands on the wheel, mind focused on the work ahead. The morning sun cast long shadows across the commercial parking lot where Elijah's work truck sat idle. Between jobs, he pulled out his phone and the business card he'd gotten from a trusted colleague months ago. Just a simple white card with clean black text. Angela Frost Investigations. He'd kept it, not because he expected to need it, but because keeping potentially useful information was second nature to him. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Frost Investigations. Ms. Frost, my name is Elijah Carter. I need some information documented. His voice was as steady as it was when explaining complex electrical work to clients. Would you have time to meet today? There was a brief pause, the sound of pages turning. I can do 11:30. There's a coffee shop on Peachtree Street, the Daily Grind. I'll be there. The coffee shop was busy enough that private conversations disappeared into the general noise. Angela Frost matched her voice, efficient, direct, with the sharp awareness he recognized from his days working with law enforcement on commercial inspections. She wore a plain black blazer and kept her gray-streaked hair pulled back severely. No jewelry, no unnecessary movement. They sat at a corner table, coffee untouched between them. Elijah laid out the basic facts without emotion, the way he would describe a wiring problem. Names, addresses, patterns of movement. Angela took minimal notes, asking only clarifying questions about time frames and locations. I need documentation, he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Cash, counted out carefully that morning. Everything you can verify about their interactions, locations, frequency, duration. Angela nodded once, not reaching for the envelope until he finished speaking. How long do you need this monitored? 2 weeks should be enough to establish the pattern. After that, I need background. How far back this goes? Who else might have known? I'll call when I have something concrete. She stood, tucking the envelope into her jacket. Mr. Carter? I don't need to tell you to maintain your normal routine. No, ma'am, you don't. Over the next 10 days, Elijah lived his life with mechanical precision. He came home at his usual times, asked about Brianna's day, watched the games he always watched. When she suggested trying a new restaurant that Saturday, he agreed easily. Over dinner, she was more animated than she'd been in months, laughing at his quiet observations about his crew's latest mishaps, touching his hand across the table. He matched her energy precisely, not too warm, not too distant, just normal. Normal was its own kind of camouflage, he realized. It was the perfect cover for the real work happening underneath, like the complex wiring systems he installed behind pristine walls. Angela called on the 9th day. I have preliminary documentation. Can you meet? They met at the same coffee shop, This time, Angela brought a manila envelope. Inside were surveillance photographs, dated and time-stamped. 4 separate occasions over the past 10 days. Brianna's Mercedes entering the Buckhead Apartments parking structure. Time-stamps showing her arrival and departure. 3 to 4 hours each visit. The dates aligned perfectly with her explanations. Dinner with Jade, a late meeting with her mother, a yoga class with friends. Each lie documented in crisp color photographs. Elijah studied each image with the same careful attention he gave to analyzing electrical schematics. He noted the different outfits, clothes he recognized, clothes he'd watched her choose from their shared closet. He observed her body language entering and leaving the building, relaxed, unhurried, comfortable in the space. "The apartment belongs to Dominic Ashford," Angela said quietly. "Lease is in his name only, but security records show her fob has been active some time." Elijah nodded, replacing the photographs in their envelope with steady hands. He looked up at Angela, his voice level. "I need to know how long. The complete timeline, from the beginning. Everything you can verify." Angela's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Recognition, perhaps, of the weight of what she was being asked to uncover. "That will take more time. I'll need to go through archived records, social media history, event documentation. Take whatever time you need. Just make it thorough." He stood, the envelope secure in his work jacket's inside pocket. Angela remained seated, already making notes in her small notebook. "I'll call you when I have the full picture," she said, not looking up. Elijah walked back to his truck, the morning sun now high overhead. He had 2 more jobs scheduled, a restaurant rewire and a security system installation. He checked his phone for the addresses, started the engine, and pulled out into traffic. The envelope rested against his chest as he drove, its contents shifting slightly with each turn. He focused on the road ahead, his hands steady on the wheel, moving through the city like any other working man on any other working day. Elijah's phone vibrated against the center console as he pulled into the supply warehouse lot. Angela Frost's number. He parked away from the other contractors' vehicles, positioning his truck where he could see the lot's entrance. "This is Elijah," he answered, his voice steady despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "Mr. Carter." Angela's tone was measured, professional. "I have the timeline you requested. Are you able to talk?" "Yes." He shifted in his seat, watching a delivery truck lumber past. "Go ahead. I've gone through everything. Social media archives, event photographs, public records, cross-referenced locations and dates." She paused briefly. "The relationship between your wife and Mr. Ashford began approximately 34 months ago. I can verify regular contact from that point forward. 34 months. Elijah's mind immediately started calculating, the way it did with load requirements and voltage drops. 34 months back from today. The numbers aligned with perfect, devastating clarity. Savannah. He and Brianna had gone to Savannah for their anniversary, exactly 34 months ago. He remembered planning it during lunch breaks, researching historic inns online between estimates. He'd found the perfect place, a restored Victorian with a wraparound porch, walking distance to River Street. He made dinner reservations 2 months in advance at the restaurant she'd mentioned wanting to try. The bracelet. 3 weeks before the trip, they'd walked past an antique jewelry store. Brianna had pointed at a delicate silver piece in the window. Not obviously, just a quick gesture and an appreciative comment. He'd gone back the next day and bought it, kept it hidden in his tool chest where she never looked. In Savannah, he'd given it to her over dinner. She'd opened the box and her eyes had filled with tears. "You always know exactly what I need," she'd said. He could still hear the catch in her voice, see the way the restaurant's candlelight caught the silver as he fastened it around her wrist. She had already been sleeping with Dominic Ashford for 3 months. The realization spread through him like a slow electrical current. Every memory of the past 34 months required immediate recalibration. Their last 3 anniversaries, Christmas mornings, Thanksgiving at her mother's house, Sunday mornings when she'd reach for him in bed, sleepy and soft, telling him she loved him. All of it constructed on top of a lie that preceded the memories themselves. "Mr. Carter?" Angela's voice brought him back to the parking lot. "There's more documentation if you need it. Photographs from events, timeline verification through multiple sources." "Send it," he said. His voice sounded normal to his own ears, which seemed strange. "The complete file. I'll have it delivered to the drop location we discussed by end of day." She paused again. "Will you need anything else?" "Not yet. Thank you, Ms. Frost." He ended the call and sat completely still, watching contractors come and go from the supply warehouse. A man in a high-visibility vest nodded at him as he walked past, probably someone Elijah had worked with before, but he couldn't place the face right now. 22 minutes passed on the truck's digital clock. He watched each minute change, the green numbers marking time, while his mind cataloged and recategorized 3 years of memories. The Christmas she'd surprised him with new tools, the weekend trip to Charleston for his birthday, the dinner parties with her friends where she'd introduced him proudly as "my husband," the one who built his own company from scratch. Each memory now required a footnote. This happened while she was living a second life. This gesture was performed while she was maintaining an elaborate lie. This moment of apparent intimacy was constructed by someone who had already given herself to another man. The clock ticked to the 23rd minute. Elijah started the engine. He had 3 more jobs today: a panel upgrade in Virginia Highland, a rewire consultation downtown, and a security system installation in Decatur. He pulled up the addresses on his phone, checked his parts inventory, and merged back into traffic. He worked the full day without missing a measurement or connection. He explained complex electrical concepts to clients with his usual patience. He signed off on his crew's work with his standard thoroughness. Not a single person he encountered would have noticed anything different about Elijah Carter on this completely normal Wednesday. 2 days after the Savannah revelation, Angela's second report arrived in a manila envelope. Elijah waited until evening to open it, sitting at the workbench in his garage after Brianna had gone to her weekly yoga class, another routine he now questioned. The new photographs slid out easily. The first several confirmed what he already knew: Brianna and Dominic at various events, their body language telling a story that seemed obvious now, but it was the last image that made Elijah's hands go still. The photograph showed the interior of a downtown Atlanta lounge, taken approximately 14 months ago according to Angela's notation. The lighting was dim but clear enough. Brianna and Dominic sat at a corner table, leaning close. Her hand rested on his forearm, comfortable, familiar. The intimacy was undeniable, but it wasn't their closeness that made Elijah's breath catch. It was the figure in the background, partially turned away, but unmistakable. Andre Holloway, drink in hand, talking to someone just out of frame. Andre, Brianna's younger brother. The man Elijah had mentored for 4 years, paid for certifications, trusted with his biggest jobs. The person he considered family more than in-law. Elijah set the photograph down and closed his eyes. Every interaction with Andre over the past 14 months scrolled through his mind like security camera footage. Lunch breaks on job sites, sharing sandwiches, and talking about the Hawks' chances this season. Andre asking about home, about Brianna, with that careful attention that Elijah had mistaken for brotherly concern. The basketball court at Washington Park, where they played 2-on-2 most Saturdays. Andre bringing up his sister casually. She seems happy lately, while Elijah thought nothing of it. The day Andre's truck broke down, and Elijah spent a Sunday helping him replace the transmission. They'd worked in comfortable silence, passing tools back and forth, the easy rhythm of men who trusted each other completely. The Christmas party at Elijah's house 3 months ago. Andre bringing that bottle of bourbon he knew Elijah liked, sitting in the kitchen late into the night, talking about everything and nothing, looking his friend in the eye and saying nothing about the secret he was keeping. Elijah picked up his phone and called Angela. "Ms. Frost, I need you to verify something." His voice was quiet, controlled. "I want to know if Andre Holloway appeared at any other events hosted by Dominic Ashford." "I'll check right away," she said. "Give me a few hours." Elijah worked in his garage while he waited, organizing tools that were already organized, checking inventory he knew by heart. The familiar tasks helped him maintain his composure, kept his hands busy, while his mind processed this new layer of betrayal. Angela called back just after 9. "Mr. Carter, I found records of at least 3 additional events over the past year and a half where Andre Holloway was present. All of them were also attended by your wife and Mr. Ashford." Elijah absorbed this information silently. 3 more events. 3 more times Andre stood in the same room where his sister carried on her affair, watched her betray his friend, and chose to say nothing. "The dates are in my follow-up report," Angela continued, "along with supporting documentation." "Thank you," Elijah said. He ended the call and set his phone down carefully on the workbench. Over a year. Andre had known for over a year. Every job site, every basketball game, every shared meal. All of it happened while Andre carried this knowledge. He had watched Elijah plan that Christmas party, had helped him hang lights on the house, had accepted every expression of friendship while protecting his sister's secret. This betrayal landed differently than Brianna's. Her affair was a clean break, a complete violation that could be categorized and contained. But Andre's silence was insidious. It had lived inside every moment of trust between them for 14 months. It had allowed Elijah to keep believing in a friendship that was already compromised beyond repair. Elijah stood at his workbench, looking at the tools they'd shared, the projects they'd built together, the garage itself. Andre had helped him install these cabinets, wire these lights, pour this concrete floor. Every surface held some memory of their collaboration. He picked up the folder containing Angela's reports and placed it carefully in his top drawer. Then he stood in the empty garage, surrounded by the evidence of a friendship that had meant everything to one man, and, apparently, not enough to the other. Silently, methodically, he added Andre to the plan. Elijah sat in his truck outside a coffee shop where he occasionally met Angela for updates. This would be their final meeting. He had one last question that would complete the picture. Not because he needed it to move forward, but because he needed to understand exactly who he was dealing with. "Has Dominic Ashford done this before?" Elijah asked, his voice steady. Angela took a sip of her coffee before answering. "I had a feeling you might ask that. Give me a few days to check Charlotte. That's where he lived before Atlanta." Elijah nodded. He didn't ask how she knew to look there specifically. That's why he'd hired her. She followed threads others might miss. 4 days later, Angela called while Elijah was finishing up paperwork in his office. Her voice carried the particular tone she used when delivering significant information. "You were right to ask," she said. 5 years ago in Charlotte, almost identical situation. Married woman, long-term affair. The husband eventually found out. Elijah leaned back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear. "Tell me everything." The woman, I'll keep her name private, was married to a real estate developer. Dominic moved in the same social circles. They began an affair that lasted nearly 2 years. When the husband started getting suspicious, Dominic suggested they cool things off, but he didn't end it completely. He kept her on the hook, meeting occasionally, until the husband finally caught them. What happened after? Dominic left Charlotte within 3 months. The woman's marriage ended, but not before things got messy. My contact there says the husband made sure certain people knew exactly why Dominic was leaving town. Elijah absorbed this, thinking about how neatly Dominic had reconstructed himself in Atlanta, the events, the connections, the carefully curated image of success. "There's more," Angela continued. "The woman in Charlotte. She wasn't some innocent party who got swept away. She pursued him knowing he was trouble, stayed even when her husband started asking questions. She made her choice with her eyes wide open." Something clicked into place for Elijah. "Like Brianna?" "Yes," Angela said. "And speaking of your wife, I talked to someone who works at the Morrison, one of Dominic's regular venues. Early in their involvement, Brianna was told about Charlotte. A mutual friend warned her, thinking she should know." Elijah's free hand tightened on his desk. "She knew." "She knew," Angela confirmed. "She heard the whole story and stayed anyway. My source overheard them discussing it at an event last year. Brianna wasn't concerned. She actually seemed to find it exciting, like it proved Dominic was worth the risk." The full weight of this landed heavily. Brianna hadn't stumbled into an affair with a charming man who swept her off her feet. She had evaluated the risk, understood the pattern, and made a deliberate choice to pursue it anyway. She had looked at Elijah's steady loyalty and decided that Dominic's dangerous attention was worth more. "Is there anything else you need from me, Mr. Carter?" Angela asked. "No," Elijah said. "You've been thorough. Thank you." After hanging up, Elijah sat in his office as the late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds. He thought about Brianna's careful construction of their marriage, the performance of contentment, the calculated distance, the way she had built a life with him while systematically undermining it. She had chosen this, eyes wide open, knowing exactly who Dominic was and what he was capable of. That evening, after Brianna had gone to bed, Elijah called his sister Carolyn. She answered on the second ring, and he could hear in her voice that she knew something was wrong. "I need to tell you everything," he said, "and I need you to just listen until I'm done." For the next 40 minutes, Elijah laid it all out: the initial discovery, Angela's investigation, the 34 months, Andre's betrayal, and finally, the Charlotte revelation. Carolyn remained silent throughout, though he could hear her sharp intake of breath at certain details. When he finished, the line was quiet for several seconds. Then Carolyn spoke, her voice carrying the same steady strength he'd relied on his entire life. "Tell me what you need me to do." The morning after his conversation with Carolyn, Elijah sat at his kitchen table before dawn, a notepad in front of him. He approached the confrontation the same way he planned complex electrical installations, breaking down each component, considering the sequence, anticipating every possible point of failure. Brianna came downstairs while he was writing, already dressed for her morning workout. She kissed his cheek as she passed, a gesture that felt like muscle memory more than genuine affection. "Don't forget about the gala next weekend," she said, grabbing her water bottle. "Dominic's really outdone himself with this one. The venue is gorgeous." Elijah looked up, his face perfectly neutral. "The charity event? I was planning to go." Brianna's smile brightened. "Really? I thought I might have to convince you." "No convincing needed," he said. "I'm looking forward to it." After she left, Elijah returned to his list. The setting was perfect. A public event where everyone would be dressed up, social guards lowered by cocktails and music. Brianna had handed him the ideal stage without realizing it. He made his first call at 8:30 a.m., after he knew Evelyn Holloway would have finished her morning devotional. Brianna's mother answered on the third ring, her voice warm with genuine affection. "Elijah, this is a surprise." "Good morning, Evelyn. I need to ask you something important," he said. "Are you and Earl free next Saturday evening?" "I believe so. Why?" "There's a charity gala downtown. I'd really appreciate it if you both would attend." He paused. "I can't explain why right now, but it's important." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. She had always been perceptive. It was one of the qualities he most respected about her. "Is everything all right, Elijah?" "It will be," he said. "Can I count on you being there?" "Of course," she said without hesitation. "We'll be there." His second call was to Douglas Payne, the family law attorney recommended by his most trusted electrical inspector. Douglas's office was in a converted Victorian house in Grant Park, all dark wood and quiet efficiency. The attorney listened without expression as Elijah outlined the situation and his planned timing. "You want the papers ready to file first thing Monday morning?" Douglas confirmed, making notes. "Yes, and I need everything protected. The house, the business, all of it." Douglas nodded. "I'll have it prepared. But you understand that confronting her publicly, while satisfying, could complicate things legally?" "I understand," Elijah said. "But some things matter more than legal complications." His third call was to Angela Frost. She answered with her usual professional directness. "I need you at the gala," he said. "Not working, just present, with the full documentation available if needed." "Which documents specifically?" "Everything. The surveillance photos, the timeline, the Charlotte background. I want it all there." "I'll be there," she said. "Back corner of the bar. Blue dress. The folder will be in my bag." That evening, Elijah met Carolyn at their favorite diner, the same place they'd eaten Sunday dinners when he was first starting Carter Electric. She arrived carrying a leather portfolio. "I've mapped the venue," she said, spreading out the floor plan. "There's a side lounge area, partially separated from the main floor. Good sightlines, enough privacy for conversation, but still visible enough that people will notice." Elijah studied the layout. "You'll position yourself there before I start?" "Yes. I'll hold the folder Angela brings. I'll stay quiet unless you need me." She looked at her brother. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "I'm sure," he said. "It has to be public. She spent 3 years managing how people see her." That ends Saturday night. The week passed, with meticulous preparation disguised as normal routine. Elijah came home on time. He asked about Brianna's day. He mentioned looking forward to the gala more than once, watching her pleased reaction each time. The night before, he stood in their bedroom, carefully ironing his best charcoal suit. The steam rose in the quiet room as he pressed each crease to perfection. Brianna was out. A late meeting, she'd said. He knew better now, but it didn't matter. Tomorrow would change everything. He hung the suit on the closet door, the fabric catching the last light of evening. Everything was positioned exactly as it needed to be. Evelyn and Earl would be there to witness. Douglas had the papers ready. Angela would have the documentation, and Carolyn would be waiting in the side lounge. Elijah got into bed early, switching off the lamp. For the first time since he'd followed Brianna to Buckhead, he felt completely at peace. Sleep came easily, deep and untroubled. Tomorrow would bring its own storm, but tonight he rested, knowing he had built something that would not fail. The downtown Atlanta venue glowed against the night sky, its modern glass facade illuminated from within. Elijah pulled up to the valet stand in Brianna's preferred car, the Mercedes she'd chosen for occasions exactly like this. He handed the keys to the attendant and turned to help his wife from the passenger seat. Brianna emerged in a midnight blue dress that caught the light like water. Her smile was radiant, more present and warm than it had been in months. She took Elijah's arm as they walked toward the entrance, her fingers curling around his bicep with familiar intimacy. "You look so handsome tonight," she said, straightening his tie with her free hand. "I'm really glad you wanted to come." Elijah covered her hand with his, a gesture that would have looked loving to anyone watching. Wouldn't miss it. The main ballroom was already filling with Atlanta's social circle. Designers, developers, old money and new success, mingling over cocktails and carefully curated music. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white-clothed tables. A jazz quartet played from a raised platform near the dance floor. Brianna's laugh came easily as they made their way through the crowd. She introduced him to people he'd never met, her hand staying on his arm, her body angled toward his with practiced affection. It was a flawless performance. he let her give it. Within 5 minutes, Elijah spotted Dominic across the room. The event promoter stood near the bar in a tailored blue suit, holding court with a small group. Dominic saw Brianna first. A micro-expression flickered across his face, something hungry and possessive, before he caught himself and smoothed it away. When Dominic's eyes moved to Elijah, his smile was the same one from their first meeting, broad, unbothered, radiating the confidence of a man who had never considered the quiet electrician a threat. He raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. Elijah returned the gesture with perfect calm. He had learned long ago that the most dangerous wire was often the one people assumed was dead. 30 minutes into the evening, Evelyn and Earl Holloway arrived. Elijah watched Brianna's face, register surprise and then pleasure. She assumed their presence was coincidence, perhaps her mother's own social connections at work. She moved toward them immediately, pulling Elijah along. "Mama! Daddy! I had no idea you were coming tonight." Brianna embraced her mother warmly. Evelyn's eyes met Elijah's over her daughter's shoulder. A look of quiet understanding passed between them. "We couldn't miss it," Evelyn said simply, squeezing her daughter once before letting go. Earl shook Elijah's hand firmly, his grip conveying what his expression carefully did not. The older man had always treated Elijah like a son. That wouldn't change after tonight. Across the room, Andre worked the crowd with his usual ease, moving from group to group, glass in hand, completely at home in the world Elijah had helped build for him. When their eyes met, Andre raised his drink in familiar greeting. Elijah lifted his own glass in return, his motions smooth and unhurried. He let 40 minutes pass. He watched Brianna move through the room, her performance never wavering. He observed Dominic grow increasingly comfortable, the initial flash of tension at their arrival completely forgotten. He noted the way the alcohol softened everyone's edges, lowered their guards, made them feel secure in their assigned roles. Then, when the moment was exactly right, Elijah excused himself from Brianna's side and made his way to the bar. Dominic stood alone there, waiting for a fresh drink. The timing was perfect. Elijah stepped up beside him, close enough that no one else would hear what he was about to say. His voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely clear. "I know everything. I've known for weeks. The apartment in Buckhead, the key fob, all of it." He didn't look at Dominic as he spoke. "Tonight isn't about you. It's about my wife hearing the truth out loud, in front of people who matter. You can stay or you can leave, but if you stay, you will watch what happens next." Dominic's carefully maintained composure cracked, just slightly, but enough. His smile faltered. The glass in his hand trembled almost imperceptibly. He opened his mouth to respond. Elijah turned and walked away before he could speak, moving purposefully toward where Brianna stood with her mother. Elijah touched Brianna's elbow gently, the same spot where he'd watched Dominic's hand rest so many times before. "Can we step over here for a moment? All of us?" His voice carried the same steady calm he used when explaining complex electrical work to clients. Reasonable, measured, clear. The side lounge area offered a quiet pocket away from the main floor's energy. Soft lighting from wall sconces created intimate shadows, and the musica's volume dropped to a comfortable murmur. 2 cream-colored sofas faced each other across a low table, flanked by high-backed chairs. "Of course," Brianna said easily, still caught in the warmth of her evening's performance. She followed his lead, Evelyn and Earl moving with them. 2 of Brianna's friends, women Elijah recognized from countless brunches and social gatherings, drifted along, sensing something worth witnessing. Carolyn Carter-Briggs already stood near one of the sofas, a manila folder held carefully in both hands. Her presence registered on Brianna's face as confusion. She hadn't known Elijah's sister would be here. Before she could question it, Andre appeared at the group's edge, drawn by some instinct that told him this gathering mattered. Elijah waited until everyone settled, His hands relaxed at his sides. When he spoke, his voice remained perfectly level, as if delivering a project assessment. "Brianna, I know about the affair with Dominic Ashford. I know it's been going on for 34 months. I know about the apartment in Buckhead, and I know you have a key fob to access it directly." Brianna's face shifted through expressions like channels changing. Surprise, denial, calculation. "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. The address is 2847 Peachtree Road, apartment 1103. Elijah didn't raise his voice. "You've been there at least 4 times in the past 2 weeks. Each visit lasted between 3 and 4 hours. You told me you were at the gym, at your mother's, having dinner with Jade." Color drained from Brianna's face, but she rallied. "You've been having me followed? This is insane. Savannah." One word, just that. But Brianna's composure shattered like dropped glass, because she knew exactly what he meant. The anniversary trip he'd planned for 2 months, the bracelet she'd pointed out in the window weeks before, the tears in her eyes when she opened it, her whispered words about how he always knew exactly what she needed. She had already been sleeping with Dominic for 3 months when she spoke those words. Evelyn Holloway made a sound. Not quite a gasp, not quite a moan, but something raw and maternal that spoke of wounds that couldn't be bandaged. Earl's hand found his wife's shoulder, squeezing gently. Elijah turned to Andre, who stood frozen at the edge of their group, drink forgotten in his hand. "How long did you know?" The silence stretched. Andre's mouth opened, closed, opened again. His voice, when it came, was smaller than Elijah had ever heard it. "Look, man, I was in an impossible position. She's my sister. I couldn't—" "I paid for your OSHA certification," Elijah said quietly. "I paid for your electrical licensing exam. I referred you work when I didn't have to. I let you into my home." His voice remained steady, but each word landed like a hammer strike. "And you sat across from me at my table and let me live inside a lie for over a year." Movement at the lounge entrance caught Elijah's attention. Dominic stood there, unable to resist witnessing the destruction of his carefully maintained facade. Elijah acknowledged him with a single glance, then dismissed him completely, the most thorough rejection possible. He turned back to Brianna, whose face had crumpled into something naked and afraid. "Douglas Payne will file divorce papers in the morning. Everything is prepared." He straightened his jacket with careful hands. "I'm leaving now. You're welcome to stay. I wish you the life you chose." Earl Holloway's handshake was firm. His eyes wet with emotion, he wouldn't voice. Elijah leaned in to kiss Evelyn's cheek, and her hand came up to touch his face briefly. A mother's gesture of love for the son she was losing. Without another word, Elijah walked out of the lounge, out of the ballroom, out of the lie he'd been living. His footsteps were steady, his back straight. Carolyn followed 4 steps behind, still carrying the folder they hadn't needed to open. The morning sun hadn't fully cleared the Atlanta skyline when Douglas Payne walked into the courthouse, divorce papers in hand. Elijah was already 3 hours into rewiring a restaurant's kitchen, his hands steady on copper wire, his mind focused on the task before him. He didn't need to watch the filing happen. The paperwork would do its quiet work without his presence. Brianna received service of the papers that afternoon. She called twice. Elijah let the calls go to voicemail and continued working. When he checked the messages that evening, they were both silent, just breathing, then a click. The house felt different now that the truth lived in it openly. Elijah moved through his evenings with a strange lightness, like setting down a weight he'd carried so long he'd forgotten its pressure. He cooked simple meals. He watched games without pretending to listen for a key in the door. He slept in the middle of the bed. 10 days after the gala, Brianna came to collect her things. She brought her cousin Marcus to help, thinking perhaps that a buffer would make it easier. Elijah was at work, deliberately, professionally, but he'd left boxes in the garage, all sizes, neatly stacked. He'd also left a clear note on the kitchen counter: what was hers, what wasn't, what he would contest if removed. The clarity of it, the calm documentation, was its own kind of statement. She took what belonged to her, and nothing more. The security cameras Elijah had installed the day after the gala recorded everything, but they weren't needed. When he came home that evening, the house felt scraped clean. Missing things, but missing the right things. The lies were gone too. Brianna went to her mother's house in Decatur. Evelyn welcomed her daughter because that's what mothers do. But the welcome came with silence. Heavy, meaningful silence that spoke louder than words. Evelyn had watched Elijah build a life with his hands, had seen his steady love for her daughter, had trusted him with her family's happiness. The weight of Brianna's choices filled every room she entered. Andre tried calling twice in the first week after the gala. Elijah let those go to voicemail too. The messages were stumbling attempts at explanation. Family loyalty, impossible position. He never meant to hurt anyone. The kind of words that meant nothing against 34 months of deliberate silence. The next job that would have gone to Andre went to someone else. So did the one after that. Elijah made no announcement, wrote no emails, gave no speech about betrayal or consequences. He simply stopped calling. Andre's tools, some bought with money from Carter Electric jobs, stayed in his truck, waiting for work that wouldn't come. Eventually, he stopped leaving messages. The silence became permanent. Dominic and Brianna's relationship crumbled under daylight's weight. What had seemed exciting in secret felt hollow in the open. Their pattern had been built on stolen hours and careful lies. Without those walls to hold it up, it collapsed under its own emptiness. They ended things within 2 months, quietly, with none of the drama that had fueled their affair. Dominic's carefully curated image carried a new story now. He wasn't ruined. Men like him rarely were. But his shine had dulled. The rooms didn't welcome him the same way anymore. 3 weeks after the gala, Elijah's phone lit up with Evelyn's name. He answered on the second ring, standing in his garage beside the workbench, where he'd first processed the truth about Brianna's betrayal. "I won't apologize for her," Evelyn said after hello. "She made her choices. You don't owe me anything," Elijah replied. "No, but I want you to know. I'm proud of the man you've always been. You deserved better than what you got from us." They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Her garden, the weather, Earl's new fishing rod. The conversation carried healing in its ordinariness. 14 months spun past like copper wire off a spool. Carter Electric grew steadily, a city contract for electrical inspections across 2 districts. 2 new crew members hired in spring, talk of adding a second van to the fleet. Elijah didn't rush any of it. Growth came at its own pace when you built things right. He'd been on 2 dinners with Petra, a landscape architect he met through a mutual client. She wore her competence quietly, like he did. She laughed easily and spoke honestly and didn't perform anything for anyone. They were taking it slow, letting whatever might grow between them find its own rhythm. Driving to a site visit, Elijah passed the Buckhead high-rise where Brianna's lies had lived. The building registered like any other landmark now, present but powerless. He thought briefly about that night in the garage, sitting in darkness, choosing what kind of man he would be through all of it. Not fire, not explosion, something more durable. His phone rang as he turned onto Peachtree Street. An Atlanta number he didn't recognize. He answered smoothly, "Carter Electric. This is Elijah." The potential client described a large mixed-use development in Midtown, the kind of contract that would have felt impossible 2 years ago. Elijah listened carefully, asked the right questions, liked what he heard. They set a meeting for Thursday. He kept driving, the city spreading wide and welcoming around him, full of work waiting to be done right. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.